Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going over another one of those incredibly polarizing books, Ready Player One. Now this review is going to have light spoilers, so light spoiler warning, and also light spoiler warnings for Ready Player 2, because if you are unaware, the sequel to Ready Player 1, Ready Player 2, came out in about December last year. I've got a review on my channel for it, and it was actually one of the only negative reviews that I have done for my channel, because, spoiler warning, that book is terrible. Ready Player 1 is fantastic. If you are considering reading Ready Player 2, I would recommend watching that review first, and saving yourself about $20. So like I said, this is going to have light spoilers because Ready Player 1 came out about 10 years ago, and I imagine everyone's seen the movie by now, so you should have a pretty good understanding about what Ready Player One is about. Although if you have not read the book and the movie are completely different. Same premise, same idea, but the way the story is told is incredibly different. Personally, I think they're both great. So if you've read one, haven't seen the movie, or if you've seen the movie but haven't read the book, get amongst it. They're both great. If you've done neither of them, get amongst both of them. I'd recommend reading the book first though. And if you guys are interested, I'll do a video comparing the two. Let me know in the comments below if you're interested in that. Now, the thing that I really enjoyed about this book is that this book was kind of like a love note from gamer nerds like myself to the gaming industry itself. But not only to the gaming industry itself and the just immense hours of pleasure and fun and purpose and achievement that it's given us, but also to other gamers. Because I feel like chat rooms like Call of Duty or League of Legends that are just incredibly renowned for being as toxic as humanly possible really gives other gaming chat rooms a bad name, because a lot of times you'll come across a lot of really great people when you're playing video games. And I feel as if that is what this book is. It is a gamer nerd's love note to the gaming industry, the movie industry, and all the great people that you encounter along the way. And I feel as if the main character really does a fantastic job of capturing us all in that awkward teen phase where really gaming was all that we had. Because the main character is an awkward, overweight gaming nerd. But by the end of the story, he is rich, he gets the girl, he has all his friends, and he becomes the owner of his favorite gaming industry. But most importantly, he becomes the hero of his own story. And this story is just over the top and ridiculous, but it's just done in all the right ways. And even then, when I say that, even when they talk about the more cringier parts of the gaming industry, like when H and Wade just like sling childish insults at each other, the first time you're like, okay, I get it. But then by like the 10th time, you're like, okay, this is getting really ridiculous. I wish they'd stop doing that. But then they also show that toxic side by getting IROC to start using like homophobic slurs, which if you've ever been in like a Call of Duty or League of Legends chat room, you would know is not uncommon. But it does make you cringe when you read it, because there are people that are just that degenerate out there. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is I feel as if this book does a really good job at capturing both of the positive and the negative sides of gaming. So anyway, let's get straight into this review with a recap of what happens. Now, this book follows a young teenage protagonist, Wade Watts, on his mission to find Halliday's Easter egg. Now, all this happens inside of the Oasis, which is a big virtual reality world that everyone escapes to because the real world is gone down the toilet. I have no idea why I just said toilet like that, but the whole world's gone down the toilet due to war, famine, limited resources, and climate change. Halliday's Easter egg will give whoever finds it billions of dollars and total control over the Oasis. The bad guys in the story, and I say the word bad guys with air quotes because if it wasn't for all of the murders, the bad guys in this story wouldn't technically be bad guys, they would just be two competing factions. But the fact that they do that kind of like murder and slave stuff does make them the bad guy. But I feel as if they didn't do that, they wouldn't technically be bad people. They would just be like a ruthless business. But anyway, IOI, the bad guys in this story, are the big tech company, and I feel as if they are very representative of the big gaming industry companies. I feel as if they, for example, EA. I feel as if they represent the companies that are trying to monetize games as much as possible, regardless of how much the gamers don't want it and how much it damages the industry. For example, loot boxes, microtransactions, and a monthly game pass when you're already paying $100 for the game. Because the bad guys are trying to monetize the Oasis as much as they can with a monthly fee and putting advertising on every surface that they can. Anyway, so you know the good guys, you know the bad guys, so now you go on a fun-filled romp through 80s nostalgia, you go and do cool movie stuff, you see cool worlds, they play video games, they talk about old computers, they go through movies. It's really just a fun, adventure-filled romp through nostalgia. And it really is worth mentioning here that I was not born in the 70s, I did not grow up in the 80s, I was not born in the 80s, I was born in the 90s. So a lot of the nostalgia in this book is not for me. I was not around, I do not feel nostalgic for most of the things in this story. But the way that the nostalgia parts are written are so warm and inviting that even though I have no nostalgia for the things or the time period, I cannot help but get carried away and swept up in the excitement, in the nostalgia, because of the way it is presented to me as the reader. And that is one of the things that makes this book so fantastic. And if you've read Ready Player 2, it's one of the things that make it so terrible because the nostalgia and the references are just not good in Ready Player 2. But they are fantastic in Ready Player 1. And basically, that's it for the recap. That's all you really need to know. You need to know who the two guys are, or who the two factions are, should we say, what they're doing, and what the story's about. But I will say again that this book is incredibly polarizing because of the references that happen in this book. Some people think that they are just ridiculous and out of place and make no sense, and they hate the book because of the references. Other people love it because of the references. Personally, I am just a video game nerd, so I love it because it is just like a deep-seated fantasy that a lot of video game players have. And I was along for the ride, and I loved it. Anyway, moving right along, let's talk about the exposition that happens at the beginning of the book. A lot of people don't mind exposition, a lot of people hate it more than anything else in the world. Personally, I think that the exposition was done incredibly well in the beginning of this book. I thought that the way that the exposition was delivered through Wade's teen angst is what made it so interesting. And it really helped to build Wade's character at the beginning of the book as well, because he was basically reacting to how much the world was in decline in the way that a teenager would. And it was a really good explanation as to the world being in decline, the energy crisis and the war and the famine and the global warming and all that stuff. It really did a great job to set up why the Oasis is so important, but also why the Oasis is so problematic at the exact same time. Because people used the Oasis as an escape tool to get away from reality. Which, let's face it, in the real world we probably would do exactly that. And I think a really good quote from the book to show up Wade's teen angst and how the world just feels like it's doomed is when the elections come up. Wade says that he doesn't bother with the elections because they're all just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And honestly, what a fantastic quote from the book. I don't vote because they're all just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Incredible. Awesome. What a quote. Now, I'm going to talk about the characters because for me, I feel as if it's the characters that really carry this book. A lot of people say it's the nostalgia, but I believe it's the characters that carry this story. And it's also because of the characters and how much they changed and how different they were in Ready Player 2 that made it so trash. But anyway, we're not talking about that. Firstly, I want to ask the question, do you guys remember when the movie for Ready Player 1 first came out? A lot of people were really upset at the actors and actresses that they picked to play the main cast because they were like thin and attractive. Whereas in the book, they're meant to be like acne and they're meant to be quite overweight because they're spending all of their time on the computer. So it just stands to reason that they're going to be overweight. And they're teenagers, so it just stands to reason that they've got acne. And a lot of people were upset that they didn't choose like bigger people to play the main characters because there aren't really a lot of stories in the world that big people get to play the hero, unless it's like for comedy. So this was one of those times where they could have been the hero, not for comedic value, and really kind of fit the part, but they didn't get that opportunity. And I remember there was a really big controversy about it. Do you guys remember that? And what do you think about that? Do you think they should have picked like big people to play these roles? Or do you think the casting they picked was fine? Also, if you're new to my channel, I'm all about books, whether it be reading them, writing them, or reviewing them. So if you like books or anything nerdy in that regard, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and give me some kind of loving comment below. Or anything as long as it's not hate, because that'll hurt my feelings. So let's keep going. Let's talk about Wade Watts. Wade Watts is our nerdy teen protagonist. He's overweight, he's got bad skin, he's full of teen angst, he's awkward and shy, and he also stands up for his friends, he stands up for what he thinks is right, and in other words, he is a relatable and a likable character. And in my opinion, his hero's journey is incredibly well done, because he comes from nothing, he is an orphan, which is quite a standard trope. He lives with his aunt and her abusive partner. He has no money, he's at school, he doesn't really have the ability to work, so he really does come from nothing, and he ends the story with everything. He goes from not wanting to risk his level 3 avatar in his game to risking his life for what he believes is right, with the whole indentured servitude in IOI. He wins the Easter egg hunt because he's smart and he dedicated himself to his craft. He wins the girl that he's had the crush on forever through getting to know her over the internet, and they know each other for a long time before they settle down with each other. And honestly, it feels as if he earns everything that he gets in this book. And in a story like this, it's so easy to not become emotionally involved or emotionally invested because nothing really... There's no stakes, there's no life or death situation, it's not like the world is ending, it's not countries going to war or anything like that. This entire story follows a virtual reality story. So it's so easy to not get invested in something like this because there are no stakes. But because you like the characters so much, and because they are fighting against things that gamers hate so much, and how engaging the idea of this Easter egg hunt is, it is easy to get swept up in the adventure and swept up in the idea and really care about their goals. And to sum up Wade's character, he was incredibly likable, he was incredibly relatable, and you really wanted the best for him. And that really also explains why he was such a bad character in Ready Player 2, because he really does become the opposite in Ready Player 2. Ready Player 2 starts 9 days after the end of Ready Player 1, and in those 9 days, Wade becomes a just total trash bag. He's no longer likable, relatable, and he just becomes an incredibly terrible person. Now let's move on to Artemis. Artemis was fantastic. I liked the fact that she was an overweight, dorky, nerdy girl who snorted when she laughed and had a birthmark. Because in a story like this where it is just a nerd's fantasy, it can be so easy to be oh yeah, the love interest is this supermodel. It turns out Artemis was this Victoria's Secret model who secretly loved video gaming, and the overweight, nerdy main character wins her in the end. But the fact that she is just a regular girl, I think the author did a really good job for that. But more than that, I thought that Artemis was incredibly grounded. For example, when she cut things off with Wade, she cut all communication because she knew what was at stake, and she knew that they were distracting each other. And she knew that there was a time limit. They had spent so many years working to find these things, and they were so close, but so were the bad guys. And she knew that she had to cut the ties so they could focus on their work, and then they had plenty of time to canoodle afterwards. I liked that she wasn't just used as a dumb honeypot character. I liked that she was smart, she knew her craft, and she even beat Wade to the first key. She found it a solid month before he did. So all in all, I have to say that I am incredibly impressed and surprised at how well this author handled the female love interest in a nerd's fantasy story. Let's move on to H. Now, what can I say about H without going into spoilers for if you have not seen the movie or read the book? I thought H was a very interesting character. H was a great friend to Wade, which I really appreciated. I really enjoyed their dynamic, except for like the childish name calling got pretty old pretty quickly, but besides that, I thought their dynamic was incredible. And I thought that H's backstory was very interesting. And yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about H. H was a great friend, interesting backstory, and interesting character without going into spoilers. Finally, when it comes to characters, I want to talk about Sorrento. Like I said, the stakes in this book were incredibly low. But the one thing that makes this book so incredibly engaging is the villain. Sorrento is something like, to put it in a modern day perspective, Sorrento is like Neil Druckmann and The Last of Us 2. He was a representative and the head of an organization that was destroying something that people loved. Did you play The Last of Us 2? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll do a whole video on The Last of Us 2. Anyway, Sorrento was an incredible villain because he represented all of the things that gamers hate. And he put on the face and the front that the gaming industry has when gamers have complaints. Like, for example, when everyone revolted against EA because of the loot crates and the subscription fees and the microtransactions for a game that they'd already paid $100 for. And the company's response was just basically, if you don't like it, go outside, nerd. That's what Sorrento represents with his cocky, smug attitude. And I think the fact that he is such a great, hateable villain contributes to why you back Wade and the High Five as much as you do when you read this book. The next thing I want to talk about is the world building. Now, the world building in this story was incredible. And the thing about the world building in this story is that the author really did have a get out of jail free card when it came to building the worlds and the scenarios that happen. Because he was writing a story that relied so much on references and nostalgia, he could have so easily relied and leaned heavily on those things that people already know. For example, there's a scene where Wade is playing Pac-Man, and it would have been so easy for the author to just say, Wade started playing Pac-Man. And we all know what Pac-Man looks like, what it sounds like, the colors, the job you gotta do. We all know what Pac-Man is. But the author went ahead and built up that sensory immersion anyway. And he did it for all of his references, whether they be games or movies. And the thing that really impressed me was that at no point did he rely on someone else's work for his challenges. Like, he could have easily said, the first key was hidden on Endor. So they all flew to Endor and they saw the Ewoks and they went to the forest, right? And because it's a book all about 80s nostalgia, people should know what Endor looks like. And so we wouldn't really have to go into the description. But all of the worlds that the people go to, he built. He built them himself. Like, the first key happens at the school's world, which is something that he created. And then when he goes and he plays the Pac-Man game, it happens on a world that he created where it's got like a big arcade museum. And then there's the zero gravity dance floor that he created. What I'm trying to get at is he did not lean on anyone else's work to have the readers fill in the blanks. He filled in all the blanks and created the world himself. But not only for the Oasis worlds, but just how bleak everything was in the real world as well. The world building in this book was fantastic. Finally, I want to talk about the plot in this book, and the plot was, in my opinion, the weakest part of the book. Not because it was bad, but because something always has to occupy the spot of the weakest spot. Like I said earlier, the issue with the plot is that the stakes are actually incredibly low. There is no life and death, there is no the world is ending, there is no imminent war, there is no destruction of anything. Like, to really put this into perspective, if Wade and the High Five failed, it's not like the Oasis was going anywhere. Like, IOI would have just put some ads in it and charged a monthly fee. Like that's it. Wade could have still hooked up with Artemis, like the hunt would have been over. There's no reason why they couldn't have met up in person. Wade and H would have still been friends. Wade already had money because of like all the stuff that he was doing, and he could have sold his story and he could have continued advertising things. So it's not like he would have been short on money, and with all that money, there's no reason why he couldn't afford like a premium account to avoid ads anyway. So it's not like his life would have changed for the worse. If anything, he still would have had like quite a huge net gain. he would have been a celebrity, he would have had heaps of money, he would still be friends with H, he would be able to hook up with Artemis in real life as well. There really was no stakes to this story. But in saying that, I still did thoroughly enjoy this book. I think that the likability of the characters and the intense believability of the villain really boosted this book and had me rooting for the whole high five the whole time. And yeah, that's basically the end of the review. If you haven't read the books, go read it. Fantastic book. I wouldn't bother reading Ready Player 2 because it is trash. Just read Ready Player 1 and leave it at that. Watch the movie. I also like the movie. Maybe I'll do a review comparing the two later on. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and as always, thank you very much.